Good evening, everyone. Present, first item on the agenda is a moment of reflection and respect. I usually have a few items to think about. I have a few items tonight that I'd like to deal with. First of all, Peter Gerasi opened his pizza place in 1965 here. I remember thinking at that time, what's a pizza? It was some kind of Dean Martin song where the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie. Do you remember that? I think I ate some of the people on that thing. Peter was an affable guy who quickly devoted his volunteer time to students at East Elgin. And now, Peter, you can make your pizzas for a much more angelic crowd. So rest in peace, Peter. Secondly, a much more serious kind of remembrance. And certainly the death of Peter is very serious, but on December the 6th, 1989, a man entered a mechanical engineering classroom at Montreal's École Polytechnique armed with a semi-automatic. After separating the women from the men, he opened fire on the women while screaming, "You're all feminists." 14 young women were murdered and 13 other people were wounded. Their names, the women's names: Genevieve Bergeron, Helene Colgan, Nathalie Croteau, Barbara Deneau, Anne-Marie Edward, Maude Havernick, Barbara Klosnik, Wadayowitz, Maurice Lagagnère, Maurice Leclerc, Anne-Marie Lemay, Sonia Pelletier, Michelle Richard, Annie Saint-Arnaud, Annie Turcotte. In 1991, the Parliament of Canada declared 6th of December to be a National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. It is also known as White Ribbon Day. So sorry to put you through this long list, but it is a day that we should remember. It happened 34 years ago. Violent and psychological anti-feminism still exists, unfortunately. Where we see it, let's speak out about it. Anyway. Thank you for listening to me. We'll carry on with a moment of reflection and respect. Thank you. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, confirmation of the agenda.
That Council adopts the agenda for the meeting of December 6, 2023 as presented.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Oslash and Councillor Chapman. All those in favor? Is carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Item 5, delegations and public meetings. We have a presentation by Larry Jeffrey on behalf of the Elmer and Malahide Museum and Archives. Larry, if you want to approach the podium over there with the mic.
Mayor Cookett, councillors, administrators, thanks for having me. Last time I was here was 6 or 7 years ago, not in this palace, of course, but the old council chambers. And at that time, I was pleading with the former council to raise our grant to $20,000 so we could give our employees a raise. Quick comment on the cap you put on from 62,000 down to 55,000. I would give most of those entities an A+ because they're volunteers, and that's where the town gets most of its bang for the buck. I'm here really to talk about the museum finance problems, or finances. You know, inflation's been running 3 or 4, 5% the last few years. Previous to that, 2%, 2%, 2%, and so on. Well, our funds are pretty well stationary. They don't go up like inflation does. And we have wages to pay, we have heating, hydro, et cetera, et cetera. And we get $15,200 from the federal government. And that's been $15,200 for the 15 or 20 years that I've been aware of it. It hasn't gone up. We have been getting $8,000 from Malahide, and they generously gave us $2,000 more, $10,000 this year. For the last 6 or 7 years, we've been getting $20,000 from this council, maybe $18,000 this year, I don't know. But we have wages to pay, and we're a little different than the other people you grant to. Can you imagine the volunteer hours soccer puts in? Well, they don't have wages to pay, to my knowledge, or heating or hydro. But look at the volunteer hours you get from even the cemetery group. I'm always impressed by that. There are two kinds of museums financially. One is museums owned by municipalities, and the other is museums not owned by municipalities. Now, Aylmer Museum has been both. Just to give you a little bit of history. Late 1970s, few interested citizens, I know Peter McLean, well, it doesn't matter, there was a shepherd in there too. But a few citizens, they bought that museum on East Street and started a museum. And early 1980s, a particularly progressive council bought the museum building from these private citizens for $1. So now it was owned by the town. Fast forward to 1998, and a particular, in my opinion, regressive council, a lot smarter than we were, sold the, well, they divested themselves of the museum. They sold it back to the, well, my wife was a volunteer, the leader of the volunteer board, and she suddenly became the chair of the museum board. And so for 25 years, it's been run by a private, I guess you call it private, but a board of volunteers. The building is appraised at 150, well, it's appraised at 131,000. We think maybe it's worth 150,000. The problem with selling it, you think it'd be worth more, but it's got the bathroom right in the middle of the bottom floor. It has no basement. It has no bedrooms. It has no kitchen. It has no shower. If you wanted to make it into a house, you'd probably have $250,000 in addition to doing that. It probably would fit some businesses. But anyway, let's say it's 150,000. But it's owned by the museum. There's a feeling, it seems to be a feeling I get that the town, some people think the town is giving us 150,000 or whatever it's worth. But it does belong to the museum board at the moment. We would gladly sell it back to you for $1. We'll even give you the $1. Let's talk about the new building. And where did we get $350,000 to buy a new building? Well, it's pretty much bequests. I can think of Marie Briggs many years ago gave $35,000 in her will specifically if we put it toward a new move. We've been looking at moving for 15 years, and I'll bet you we've looked at 20 different locations. Finally, we saw one that would work. It kind of looks like an old museum building. It's location right downtown. It's perfect for us. The only problem with it, it needs an elevator, it needs a bathroom on the base in the first floor. It needs a new stairway. The old 19th century one kind of wraps around and is narrow. We'd like to put an addition on the back someday because we'll run out of room. Museums do that. We need a wheelchair accessible entry to it. And again, you know, from the Giles Hume estate, we got quite a bit of money, $200,000. Somehow, over the years, we've come up with the $350,000. We still have a little bit left, actually, in our building fund. Well, let's talk about the $150,000 that will come if we can ever. Well, we've got to get an elevator. We can't move until we get an elevator. We can't move till we get washrooms on the first floor. And that $150,000 has been designated for the building, the new building. If we start using that to pay wages, it'll be gone in no time. That was the idea of holding back half of our grant, because we might get $150,000 if the building sold next year. Well, it won't sell next year. It'll be 2, 3, 4 years. It doesn't matter. Someday it will. We can't afford to keep two buildings. You have to pay hydro. You have to pay heat. Taxes. Let's talk about taxes. The museum board in 45 years has never paid municipal taxes. Well, why? Well, the first few years it was owned by the town, and in 1998, when it was sold back and divested by the town council, it was agreed that they wouldn't have to pay municipal taxes. Well, MPAC has got wind of the fact we bought a new building. Well, MPAC is now saying we have to pay taxes on both buildings. I estimate it'll be $6,000. We can't afford that. But so we're going to appeal, and you'll hear more about that in the future anyway. Just to kind of give you an idea what kind of value you're getting from the museum. It's costing you $20,000 a year. If it was owned by the town, it would cost you a lot more. We're a lot more efficient than you guys are. We don't have to pay decent wages. We don't have to give benefits. Our first curator went 10 years without a raise. And our present employees, there are 2 of them full-time and 1 half-time. We may not be able to afford that. Hopefully we can. Tilsonburg owns the Annandale House, their museum. $229,000 they give them a year. Annandale House does not pay municipal taxes. They're owned by the town. Ingersoll Cheese Factory, Cheese Museum. I think there was a factory or 2 there. Ingersoll, $277,000 with no tax. Elgin County Museum, owned by the county, $250,000. When I talked to Mike Baker about it, he just casually mentioned, oh yes, the county gives The art gallery, $30,000 a year. Now, very few museums are not owned by municipalities. One down in Wallacestown, the Bacchus House, I phoned them. The person that I got didn't know that, and they never got back to me. That was one. It's owned by a heritage group. Beachville, though, I'm familiar with it. And Beachville Museum is owned by a heritage group. And they get $50,000 from Zora Township and $50,000 from Southwest Oxford Township. You can see that we're underfunded, or we think we are. Anyway, what's the main function of our museum? It's to collect and maintain the artifacts relating to the Aylmer and Malahide regions. We get all kinds of artifacts given to us, like maybe 30 a month, maybe could be 100 if it's photographs or something like that. They're all put on the computer, and you can go through the Elgin County. And I was curious about Butterbox that my sister had. So I went on the line and I found that the Gay Lee Museum had Butterboxes. Nobody else did, but that was just something. It's only the time I've been on it, but you can research archives and so on. It's all tied together, all the museums in Elgin. The Springfield Lioness gave us their records recently. You can imagine how extensive those were. The Elmer Fair Board records as well. What else does the museum do besides that? The Swan Line. Are you familiar with the Swan Line? Some of you will be. Arthur's shaking his head, of course. If you live in Brantford or you live in Listowel or someplace and you want to come and see the tundra swans in the Aylmer region, you can phone the museum. We started that line, by the way. It's been 20 or 30 years. I don't know how long now. You can ask how many tundra swans are out there on a given day so you can know whether to come or not. And apparently in 2022, Sarah at the museum tells me that they had over 3,000 calls. So the new building, they've had 6 exhibits there this, year and a half, say. 7 total, 1 at the museum. Just what the doctor ordered, medical history of Aylmer, brought the book. They produced a book. I don't know where they got the time to do that, but they did. My doctor has been here a year and a half. She's in there. Duncan Sinclair's in there, and his father and his grandfather, and Pauline Roberts, the nurse, and Dennis, and so on. It's a history. 70 copies sold. It's not going to make New York Best Times. Some of the other exhibits, the Christmas Through the Ages, the history of the shoe industry in Aylmer. Do you know there were 101 they found businesses that related to the shoes? Mennonite history of Aylmer was one. The history of the Aylmer Fair was one. The history of the railroad in the Aylmer area, and the history of World War II in the area here. Jim McCallum on our board wrote this book, As the Going Down of the Sun. It relates to people who were killed in the Second World War in the Aylmer area. I'm not a great one for pageantry or anything, but I found it amazing. I was amazed. I didn't know, and I learned at this exhibit that there was a prisoner of war camp in Fingal at the RCAF base. The interesting part is the farmers around could go to Fingal, pick up an inmate to help them on the farm for the day, and then take them back. Now, there was a farmer in North Malahide, Eugene Sweet, and he and some of his neighbors that worked together on the threshing, they each had one. There were 5 of these prisoners of war, so Eugene Sweet asked the commandant, could we keep them on the farms for the threshing season? And they got permission. And they had to wear a big circular red symbol on the back of their shirts. We have one of those shirts in the museums.
Excuse me, Larry, for a minute. If you're going to give us all of the stuff that the museum has done, which is significant, we're going to be here all night.
Okay, I'll finish quickly.
Is there a specific ask that you've got in mind?
Can I just give one more minute?
Sure.
The interesting thing I found was he got these guys to stay on, and he took them to the Elmer Fair, which I thought was just really neat. The last thing I also wanted to say that had research requests, programs for schools, et cetera. I wanted to just finish off talking about one of our major fundraisers, the Tour of Homes, which you're familiar with, no doubt. We had 750 people go through 4 homes. We figured 2,000 volunteer hours. My wife took care of one house. She had 4 sessions of 4 hours and eight volunteers. That's 32 volunteers for one house. That's 128 for 4 houses. Well, we only have 25 volunteers, so that's people coming out of the Aylmer for. Anyway, I just wanted to give you some information here. We had some visitors. We only got 264 visitors that we know where they came from, because they filled out little things that maybe put their address on, but of the 750, only 264, but we know that 14 from Bayham, 79 came from St. Thomas, 61 from London, 17 from Tillsonburg, 10 from the area between Kitchener-Waterloo and Toronto, Mississauga, and so on. We had at least 1 or 2 from Chatham, Tiverton, Kamilotchi, Fonthill, Peterborough, Ottawa, Listowel, Edmonton, Guelph, Ingersoll, Edmonton, Woodstock, Jarvis, Simcoe, Forest, Brantford, Brampton, St. Mary's, Waterloo. Just wanted to give you an idea of a little bit of what we did and what our finances are. We could be in trouble with a new building. If we can't carry it on, we could go one way or the other, bankruptcy or a great museum. We hope the latter. Thanks for your time.
Right. Thank you, Larry. Stay up there for a minute. I think probably people will have questions for you. I'd like to comment, first of all, that the
bookkeeper here too.
The museum does a tremendous job for the people in this area. There's no question about that at all. And certainly, we thank the volunteers who serve for the museum. There's no doubt about that at all. And I want to point out before we get to the questions that you mentioned something about 50% of the grant being withheld. Well, I believe that the motion read that 50% would be withheld until we get an update on the building on East Street. And what you've done today serves as an update. So the 50% kind of stipulation has been covered. So we don't worry about the 50% at this point. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
Is there any questions or comments from council? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Larry, I think the people of the community are looking forward to the time when the new museum does open. And I trust that and I hope that you're successful in your fundraising ventures.
Thanks very much. We do have a little bit of a kitty left from our building fund, but like I say, it's got to be a lot more, and we've got to get grants. If we don't get grants from, for disability, probably for the elevator, we can get some kind of a grant, and some of the things that help for disabled people and so on. That's what we're hoping. Okay?
Councillor Oslach.
The museum does a great job.
Oh, yes. I can't believe what the extra hours that our employees put in and aren't paid for is just amazing. We couldn't afford to pay them for the time they put in, so,
All the volunteers come forward.
yeah.
I thank the volunteers immensely.
Like I say, 2,000 hours, for the tour of homes alone. But, soccer's the same. Hockey and so on. There's a lot of volunteers around. We appreciate them all. Thanks.
So I was one of those 750 that visited the homes. It's a tremendous amount of work that took, for sure. So thank you very much for the presentation, Larry. Any other questions from council or comments? Seeing none, we have a resolution.
That the delegation from Larry Jeffrey, delegating on behalf of the Elmer and Malahide Museum and Archives regarding grant funding in the town of Elmer and Malahide Museum and Archives' importance to the town of Elmer, be received for information.
Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Barber, Councillor Van Raes. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Item 6, the consent agenda, resolution for 6.1 and 6.2, I believe.
Yep. So the resolution reads that the December 6th, 2023 consent agenda be received for information, and further that council supports the nomination of Alex Piggott, Manager of Environmental Services at the Municipality of Central Elgin, as the municipal representative for Group 7 on the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee, and further that council approves the minutes of the regular meeting of council and Finance Committee meeting held on November the 14th, 2023.
Right. Mover and seconder, Councillor Desrosiers and Councillor Oslach. Any comments or questions on any of those items? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Item 7, staff report, 7.1, Director of Financial Services. We have a resolution.
That report, Finance 3020. And that council approves the proposed 2024 operating budget as presented with a levy impact of $6,984,154. And further, that council directs staff to present the final budget bylaw for adoption at a future meeting.
Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Rahi, seconded by Councillor Chapman. Discussion. This is the operating budget. I know we had all the discussion in Finance Committee, so is there anything further? Is there anybody who wishes? Before we get there, though, Heather would like to make a report, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you and to members of council, this is the final operating budget in front of you this evening. Estimated levy increase for 2024. The police budget was approved by the PSB board. We're just waiting for the ECC board to look at their documents and make the approval also in January. So I just wanted to take this opportunity actually to thank the chair, Deputy Mayor Barber, as the chair of the Finance Committee. I think this was something that worked very well with this council, and I think it was something that everybody had value from. So I'll take you back through where we started. So budgeting process started in June of 2023. We started with the budget survey, releasing it for public engagement, posting the feedback shortly thereafter. On August 9th, the Finance Committee was presented the preliminary budget information, as well as having a first look at the 10-year capital plan. On September 20th, the results of the public engagement were summarized, and the preliminary budget had several assumptions presented to the committee. On November 1st, we had the final capital and discretionary budget presented. and the debate for community grants were received for inclusion and finalization. On November 15th, we met for further discussion on the assumptions that were in the budget. We approved the fees and charges, including wastewater and water rates. And at this meeting, this is where the Finance Committee directed staff to present this to council tonight. So I think the committee has done a great job coming a long way from 10.81% levy impact to 4.51% tax rate increase pending EECC board approval. And we do have the team here tonight to answer any questions if there's any final questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Council. Deputy Mayor Barber?
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to recognize the effort of staff to make the budget happen in a timely and efficient manner that it did, and to the members of the Finance Committee that worked together to get to where we are today. Nobody really wanted to see any kind of an increase, but in today's environment, it's not practical. And to work with the needs and the wants of the community, and to arrive at the numbers that eventually we did get, I think reflects the good work that staff did to make it happen, and that were recognized by the committee members to actually work through it and get to where we ended up being. Well, thank you to everyone that made it work.
Councilor Roselette?
Yes, Your Worship. This is the first year the operating budget and capital budget came to council earliest. I've been on council for 13 years, and this is the earliest the budget ever come to the council and was passed. And I give the staff kudos for that, for their work, and exceptionally to Heather, good work.
Anyone else? I certainly want to second what everybody else said. I'm the Director of Finance. Heather did a tremendous job in putting this together, and as you say, this is the first time that we actually have a budget coming to closure before the end of the year. So that's a tremendous feat, I think. I think part of it too is because we did operate through a finance committee, which is a different kind of vehicle in terms of discussion. And taking a look at past years in terms of the discussion of the budget, I found that there's a great deal more discussion and input from councillors using this process. And I'd like to thank the chair of the Finance Committee for chairing the committee and allowing me to speak more than I usually would. Right. So thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to wait till Councillor Chapman returns before we call the vote. Because we are voting on the final operational budget, and I want everybody to have a vote on it.
Your Worship, now that Jamie's back, perhaps Heather could explain the advantage of an early passing of a budget, what it means to the town, and the advantages of that?
Certainly.
Certainly, Deputy Mayor Barber, through you, Mr. Mayor. For the adoption of the capital budget, the biggest advantages for Terry and Rob, who are the biggest spenders of the capital funds, to get their RFPs out before our neighbors. So they can put those tenders out and get better pricing for the capital projects. On the operational side, and there's other advantages, but those are the biggest ones. On the operational side, we're able to, in finance, be able to refocus onto year end and onto not having to retro, payroll adjustments and that sort of thing. So the resources in finance now can pivot to the projects that we still have outstanding for year end that we're working through on modernization. But we also have a lot of reconciliations that happen for T4s for year end, for OMERS. And we can kind of shelf the budget discussion or topic awaiting the county rates and basically shift to those duties that we have to do. And with our finance team, it's very small, so we wear many hats. And if we're not working on budget, we're working on the statutory obligations from finance perspective. So I appreciate council's consideration in this budget tonight in order to allow us to manage our resources properly.
Mr.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Certainly, if I could also just add one point to Heather's, from a manager's level as well, knowing your budget for the year before you start spending money is really helpful. It really helps make sure that individual managers are having active control and oversight of their budget, because a lot of times you don't get your budget approved until after the Q1. You're already in Q2, so you've spent a lot of money before you actually have council's approval. Now we know council's in favor of these amounts for these projects.
Councillor Roy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just like to thank everyone that, especially you, Heather, but I really like how you put how you broke it down for the monthly impact for an average household is $7.29. 3 coffees a month is what it's an increase in, and I find that's easy for me to relate to of what the increase is. So I like seeing that. It's easy for me and hopefully for other people to relate to it. So thank you.
Thank you. I think another good statistic there is the amount per $100,000 of assessment, so people can kind of figure out their own extra expenditure, depending on their assessment. Okay. Right. Any other comments? Seeing none, then, all those in favor of this, it's carried. Note that it is unanimous. 7.12, the manager of planning and development, actually, I think Terry will handle this one, is dealing with the name for the Elmer Industrial Park, correct? Have a motion for that?
That report, Plan 3423, entitled Street Name for Elmer Industrial Manufacturing, AIM Park, be received for information, and that council accepts the recommendation of AIM Park Road as the name of the proposed street in AIM Park.
Mover and seconder. Councilor Desrosiers, Councilor Rahi. Terry.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. This report pertains to the new road that will service the AIM Park. AIM Park is currently being constructed. The design lists the new road that links Elm Street to White Street as Street A currently. There's a need to assign a name for the road for marketing purposes and to give the road a clear identity. The name that's evolved over time that clearly identifies the purpose and location of the new road is AIM Park Road, sorry. The proposed name is based on naming conventions that were used in similar industrial park areas. And it's important to note that the town currently doesn't have a formal policy for street naming. This is something we would like to bring forward in the near future in 2024 for council. With council approval, the recommendation is to name the new road in AIM Park Road. On that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council might have.
Councilor Chapman.
Thank you, through your worship. To Terry, AIM Park Road, I'm used to roads being in the outside of town, not inside of town. So I was just thinking AIM Park Way sounds more as if it's in the town. But I mean, that's just my thought, so.
Anyone else? Councilor Ozlash.
Yes, Your Worship. AIM Park Road, I would like to AIM Park Street or Way, like Councilor Chapman. And road doesn't seem to sit with me as much.
Deputy Mayor?
Aim Park, whatever, certainly doesn't have any pizzazz, but it is functional. And I think Way has a little more class than Road,
Yeah.
a little more catchy perhaps.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, and two members of council. Again, this recommendation was something that Heather and Terry and I had worked on together, and we looked at some of the comparators. I think that the semantics of whether it's, way, lane, or road, I understand that council does have a preference for way or lane. Perhaps we could work with the Realtor and figure out, between the Realtor and then the manager of planning, we could consult on what makes the most sense. But if there is a preference for way or lane, I think that's feedback that we could walk away with and make sure that, one of those is selected if that's council's preference.
I see people nodding their heads in there. Councillor Chapman?
I'll just tell you my reasoning. If I think of Aim Park Way, way is like a way forward. It's just thinking in a manner that just seems progressive, that's all.
Anyone else? Okay, so there is resolution. Could we read the slight change in it?
Certainly, yes. So this is moved by Councillor DeRosier, seconded by Councillor Rahe. And the resolution reads that the report plan 3423 entitled Street Name for Elmer Industrial Manufacturing Park be received for information, and that the council of the town of Elmer accepts the recommendation of Aim Park Way as the name of the proposed street in the Aim Park Industrial Park.
The mover and second are okay with that? Yes, okay. Very good. Seeing no other hands up, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Item 7.13, Director of Emergency Services and Fire Chief. We have a resolution.
Apologies. That the report Fire 1023 entitled Town of Elmer Fire Department Annual Report 2023 be received for information.
Mover and seconder, moved by Deputy Mayor Barbara and Councillor DeRosier. Chief McCollum.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. As you can see my report in front of you, I'll just take 4 or 5 points of highlight to bring to everybody's attention. The actual number of calls to date is 112, 9 of which have been actually working fires. The average response time is an impressive 8 minutes, 53 seconds, and Council has to remember that's at all hours, including through the night. So that's pretty impressive times that our firefighters are achieving. They actually, when I review it, seem to be quicker through the night. The training department is on schedule to meet their provincial obligations by 2026 for all our firefighter personnel to be certified in any job they perform at the fire ground. At this time, as you read in the report, we have 25 certified Ontario firefighters. That number will go to 29 in 2024. As well as the other certifications that we will be striving for that you see in the report. The schedule for replacement of our apparatus I included in the report, and that is strictly NFPA recommendations only. I'm happy to report that staff feel comfortable extending those years due to the intensive maintenance program and schedules that we follow, particularly on our aerial ladder truck. Recent inspection of it last month confirms it is in very good working order. So we're very fortunate to have that news. Public education was a huge success in '23. We'll be offering another Coffee with the Chiefs, partnering up with our friends over at Elmer Police Services, and we will be doing that for our senior residents again in '24. It was very popular. We have many residents asking when we're going to run that program again. Emergency management, we ran a real-life scenario this year with our emergency control group at the fire station, where we did some real-life training involving the firefighters and a mock disaster over at IGPC. So that exercise went extremely well from the feedback that I received. Finally, I'd like to recognize firefighter Steve Gray, retiring this year after 37 years of dedicated service to the town of Elmer. He will be recognized tomorrow night along with several other Elmer firefighters at the fire station. And I know council was invited, and I look forward to seeing some of you attend tomorrow night. So with that, Your Worship, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of comments before I open up to council. First of all, that certification training seems, it's two simple little words. When you look at certification training, though, you're looking at things like fire prevention, fire training, fire leadership, and firefighting. A whole lot of items. We were, in fact, talking about that at County Council today because we have the Training Institute that is very, very busy. So it takes a lot of time for people to go through that. Second comment I'd make is the exercise that involved the ethanol plant was not just a tabletop paper exercise, as you intimated. You had the fire department out to IGBC, and you hit a body somewhere in there that the firefighters had to find. Kind of like a real life kind of episode. It was a great experience to be part of that. So thank you very much. Council, questions, comments? Councilor Rozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a great job, Todd. It's very
Thank
well
you.
done. Graphic, I like it.
Thank you.
For Van Rays.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to the chief. Comment and a question. The comment, it's great to see the response time, see it daily. I was at the hall yesterday, took a group from work for a tour, and there were no calls when we left. By the time I got to the main street, I saw the trucks go flying down, so they got to the hall, into trucks, and gone before I even got back to the main street, so that was pretty quick. My question regarding apparatus replacement, you mentioned even specifically the ladder is in really good shape. Even though we may be able to extend a few years, do you still recommend we start planning now for replacement, given the cost of fire apparatus is not going down each year?
Through Your Worship, great question. Aerial trucks are very expensive. We are working with finance to design a roadmap to get us to that time where we can put that out for a tender to see. I think the market right now is very unstable. I think things are very expensive. My plan is to get as many years out of this truck and present it to council with some trade-in value. I think our real key is maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. It's a big truck. It depends, it takes a lot of maintenance, and that's what makes anything last and makes it worth something at the time. So I think to answer your question, Councillor, I think in a later report, you'll see a kind of a roadmap that'll guide us when the time is right. Much like when we bought our latest pumper, council, by making a decision on that, saved close to $200,000. So I'm hopefully can bring a scenario like that forward when the timing is right, when we still can get some value out of our existing truck. But it's a market I'm watching. Great question. We will have to eventually do something. I think that's a given. But I feel very confident in our truck right now that we can at least get probably 3 to 4 good years out of it. It's got a lot of life left in it. Everybody who inspects it, it had to get another certification, as you read last month. And the engineer, actually, who had to do the inspection, said to me how great shape it's in. And that's a direct relationship from maintenance. So, great question, and we will bring something forward to you at another time. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councilor Rahi.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. To Todd. Good work. Good job. All of you, your whole team. It's nice to see how many people have been there for over 20 years. It means that everyone gets along, and they're still getting along, so.
Absolutely.
Good work. So, thanks.
Through you, Your Worship, too, I have to thank my team, and I have to thank my fire coordinator, Tara Smith, for her work in my final report as well. It's busy times at the end of the year over there, so it's definitely a team effort, and we have a great department.
Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. Echoing the comments about the professionalism of the report, really nicely laid out and easy to read. A quick question. Tires are scheduled for replacement to meet the NFPA standard. Can they be repurposed perhaps on another town vehicle and use them up because they're not defective? They just don't meet the current standard.
Absolutely. Through you, Your Worship, to answer that question. Actually, what we do, Deputy Mayor, is we sell them to a neighboring municipality that can utilize those tires on a dump truck because they are, or I'm sorry, on a garbage truck. It's a special tire and a different size, and there's particular trucks that use that side. So we do get approximately $200 a tire back, and we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So we do get some money back. So great question. It breaks my heart having to replace the tires, but we have to have the truck safe. We're basically taking tires off that look brand new, but they just don't meet the standard for a fire truck. So I try to get our best trade-in value that we can get out of those tires. And yes, they do get repurposed. We don't have a truck in our fleet over at Rob's department that uses that size of a tire. But we do, with our other departments, we do share with Rob on stuff that we can.
And
Thanks.
just to echo Jason's comments about people, without people, it wouldn't be anything. And people have come together to make it what it is, and kudos to everybody.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? That's carried, thank you. 7.14, a Public Works Coordinator, update on bulk waste collection resolution. Josh?
That report operations 2923 entitled Program Update Bulk Waste Collection 2023 be received for information.
And seconder, Councillor Oslach, Councillor Van Rays. And I think, Rob, you're doing this one, right?
Yep. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The first report I have tonight for council is the bulk waste collection, and we're happy to report that the tonnage for the program is down, even though we took steps to increase awareness of the program, advertising on social media. So I'm really pleased to see that we're starting to see a slight reduction in tonnage, less to the landfill, great for the environment. And as you can see from the report, that doesn't necessarily relate to program costs. The program costs are really influenced by the collection and the labor that goes in to collect that tonnage. And to sort of put it in perspective, to tip 1 ton at the landfill, it's $85. That's 1 ton of material. But if you were to look at the photo, let's say on page 4 there, you can imagine if the labor it takes to collect that tonnage across multiple properties, that's where the expense of this program comes in to place. It's not the tipping fee, although we're very happy to see the tonnage go down, for sure. That's the other part of the program is the enforcement. You can see that are some people that don't quite follow all the rules, and we want to make sure that this program remains viable for all those people that are following the rules. So there is a little bit of enforcement to this program. You'll see that we use the carrot more than we use the stick. We put out a lot of reminders, get people educated. That's our first method of doing it. We only had one instance where we had to call the bylaw to give us a hand to do all that sort of enforcement. So all in all, I think the program is going very well. We're seeing a lot of good uptake in the program. It's very well received in the public. There is one thing in the report I'd like to bring your attention to. We're also looking at trialing a program for next year. It's called Curbside Swap. Because of the timeline of the implementation in the program and getting the calendars out the door, it is now on the calendar, the waste management calendar. It's called a Curbside Swap program. It's going to hopefully entice some of our residents to put stuff out at the curb that they want to allow other residents to swap and pick up. You'll have a more detailed report from Leah at the next council meeting, so we'll get you all the details, how we're going to trial it and test it, so when you get questions from the public, you'll be able to knowledgeably answer them. But it is hopefully another program that allows us to reduce the tonnage and the collection out on the street for that bulk waste.
Thank you. Comments from council? Councillor Chapman.
It's just a small one. Curbside swap. To me, swap means you take something, you leave something, and I don't want anything left.
Exactly my point.
That's not the intent of the program. It would be to put out articles that you wish to.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
But that's just the word swap. That's what I think of.
Good point. Anyone else? Very good. That was a very good part. I understand Lee put the report together, via Holly. 7.15, Director of Operations, the report on the radiographic welding inspection. We have a resolution.
Okay. Yep, moving on to 7.1.5, that report Operations 3123 entitled Contract Award, Radiographic Welding Inspection Services. Yeah, it was just for information, yeah. Be received as information, and that council accepts the bid from Perfection Inspection Limited, Cambridge, in the amount of $3,535 per radiographic inspection, and we do have an update here in the resolution, and $1,955 per visual inspection per visit, plus applicable taxes. It being noted that the total cost of welding inspection is estimated to be $78,280, and further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement with Perfection Inspection Limited, Cambridge, following the terms and conditions outlined in the request for services.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Van Raes. Rob, you're doing that one.
Thank you, Worship. With the new tower, we're required to take on radiographic and visual welding inspections of the tower. This is something that our project engineer will have to work with directly with the welding inspector. So we asked them to reach out and solicit prices on our behalf, knowing better what the work was involved. So he has done that obviously with the knowledge of our procurement policy. And he has now reviewed the bids and is recommending that a Perfection Inspection out of Cambridge be awarded the contract and recommend that the town accept their offer. These costs were included in the price of the tower. This is not an unknown inspection amount.
Questions or comments from council? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you. To Rob, just a clarification, the numbers that are on the proposal, are they exactly the same as was included in the contract? Or did some numbers have to get moved around?
No, it's as expected in the contract. It's the number of inspections could fluctuate a little bit from what we inspect. So if we have to re-inspect or take on additional inspections, that would be the fluctuation.
This seems like a lot of money for checking a weld, but of course it's a very important weld. So I guess my question is, if something goes wrong, is the liability on the part of those who check the weld, or is it still liability on the town?
That's why we have the project engineer soliciting prices for this type of inspection, Your Worship. I want those reports through to our project engineer and then on to the designer of the tank. I feel it's important to have those people involved with their engineering review on it. This isn't an inspection I don't think should come down for my review, if that answers your question.
I guess I was just looking at the liability. If the welds don't hold and they were inspected to meet qualifications, is there any liability in terms of the people that inspected the weld?
I think the ultimate liability would be on the design and contractor.
Okay.
But they would review the reports for sure to see if there's any indication or if it was missed by the inspection services. That would certainly factor into it. But no, I think the ultimate liability rests with the design-build contractor.
Thank you. Councilor Usledge.
Yes, Your Worship, you don't want a leaky water tower. You don't want a leaky water tower.
I agree.
Just one comment.
Any other comments? Councillor Rahi.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Rob, I know it's a necessary evil, but the visual is the one that gets me, at least when they're coming. Those are expensive eyes they're bringing out every time, but I know it's necessary, but just a comment.
Any other questions or comments? None. All those in favor of the resolution? And that is carried. So I missed calling the vote on the bulk waste collection. I think that I got excited about the report that I didn't ask for the vote, so we'll go back to the bulk waste collection report, which was moved and seconded. And so we'll call for the vote of that right now. All those in favor of that report, and that is carried. Thank you very much. Excuse my mistake. 7.1.6. This is Adopt a Park resolution.
That report, Operations 3223, entitled Program Recommendation, Adopt a Park, be received as information, and that the council accepts the recommendation from the Parks and Beautification Advisory Committee and implements the Adopt a Park program as outlined in the report.
Okay, thank you. Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman and Councillor Van Raes. And it's Rob.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm very pleased to present this report on behalf of the Parks and Beautification Team. As the council is aware, through the annual budget process, you establish your service levels and your funding levels for all of our parks and recreational facilities. And during this term of council especially, you're aware that we've had many offers for assistance, our offers for help, and many suggestions for our park systems. We're also very lucky that some of those offers come with an offer of volunteer. How can we help? How can we get involved? So the committee was directed to sort of look for a program or a vehicle that allows us to work with those volunteers in sort of a controlled manner to support their activities and kind of work together. So I think the program that's the most beneficial to both the community and the town are the Adopt a Park program. So we've included that as an attachment to the report. The only other thing I'd like to kind of mention, and the other committee members are here to answer any questions as well. This program, we would suggest, is kind of in its infancy. We think we got it right sort of out of the gate, but there likely will be changes. There might be a group that comes up that would like to see some little tweak or modification, and we think that council should be probably open to making this a living document, at least for the first year or 2 years, to see if it works with our community. If we need to change it, I don't think the council would be served just to steadfast on it. I think we should keep an open mind and have it a living document, or at least an annual review of the program.
Okay. Thank you. Council? Comments, questions? Councillor Van Raes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Rob, I think it's a great opportunity for potential volunteers to step up and be more involved in our parks and gardens and helping out the community. And I also agree with keeping it as a living document, because whenever you're starting up a new program, you always work out the kinks the first year or two. So I definitely agree with that. But yeah, I think this is great. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to the Parks and Recreation Committee. A great job in coming up with this idea. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? As carried, thank you. 7.17, Associate Director of Infrastructure. Crossover, pedestrian crossover for John Street. Have a resolution.
That report, Operations 3323, entitled Pedestrian Crossover Analysis, John Street South and Alexander Drive, be received for information, and that council receive options for the crossing at this location, and further that council approves option A and C for the John Street South and Alexander Drive intersection.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Desrosiers, Deputy Mayor Barber. It's Terry.
Thank you, Your Worship. To give a brief summary, Council previously requested a report on the feasibility of a PXO crossing at John Street South and Alexander Drive. Because John Street is a county roadway, a crossing or a warranted crossing would fall under their jurisdiction, and a full PXO analysis is required for the county to implement the crossing. For the analysis itself, staff collected the vehicular and pedestrian counts, and I have to give a special thank you or shout out to the Elmer Police and Fire Department, as the police allowed us to use some special camera equipment to complete the pedestrian count, so thank you to those departments. The count showed that the intersection meets the vehicular volumes, but the pedestrian crossings do not meet the minimum volume stated for a PXO. Book 15 also goes on and provides other considerations, such as if the PXO will provide system connectivity and if it's 200 meters away from another crossing location. In the case of this location, it is 200 meters from another crossing, and you could argue that it will provide future connectivity once the full build-out of sidewalks and development in the area has been completed. If a PXO is implemented, Type B PXO, which is the type that has the overhead signage that goes over the roadway, and the, excuse me, the flashing, rapid flashing beacons on the side of the road is the Type B. That is the appropriate layout. We would also recommend that curb bump outs be installed at this location for safety reasons to close up that crossing distance and make it safer. The Class C estimate for a PXO at this location is $80,000. Seeing as it did not fully meet the warrants, staff prepared some options for council consideration. Option A is that we prioritize the installation of sidewalks on the east side of John Street. Currently, the sidewalk ends mid-block adjacent to Clarence Street, so there's a missing link there. Option B is to wait until the summer months to complete another pedestrian count to see if volumes may increase over the summertime. Option C is wait until development in the area has reached full build-out and then complete another pedestrian count to see if the pedestrian volumes increase at that time. Option D, include the full cost of the PXO in the Elmer 10-year capital budget. And option E is do nothing, as it did not warrant a PXO at this time. So staff recommend option A and C, that is to prioritize the sidewalk project to provide sidewalk on the east side of John Street and eliminate the need to cross at this location. John Street is currently at the top of the sidewalk warrant list that we have going for the sidewalk program. And this could be completed within the next 1 to 2 years through the sidewalk program. We could then perform another pedestrian count when full build-out of development has progressed in the area. And if it warrants a PXO at that time, we can engage the county. So on that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Worship. I think the project itself is deserving to stay off the shelf and be out there as the need demands. Perhaps instead of just A and C, maybe the option would be A, B, and C, and work toward it somewhere in the future.
Absolutely. We can, these options were all for council consideration, so we could complete another pedestrian count in the summer and see what those counts come in at, and go with all of those options.
Councillor Rosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to echo what Deputy Mayor Barber has said in his recommendation. I feel that reviewing the control test, there's various variables that would be considered for that test, such as time of day, time of year, pre-existing walking conditions, and habits. So it would be interesting to gather a couple more tests just as comparables. But the initial reason for bringing this forth to council was, one, because it was brought forth to me by various residents in the neighborhood, and two, was watching the safety concerns day after day, irregardless of how many pedestrians there are, whether it meets the minimum or not. I'm watching them struggle to cross the road, putting safety on the line. And it's not for people like me, it's for vulnerable people such as children, disabled, or senior citizens. So if an option is to put a sidewalk on John Street East, to me, either way, that alleviates the safety concern. I suggested a PXO because I was under the impression it was the cheapest, most quick option we could do. But if we can implement a sidewalk on the east side, I mean, I'm open to whatever can alleviate the safety concern, I support.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
I kind of like the idea of A, most definitely putting a sidewalk on the east side. C, doing another count once the building out is done. But also D, which actually puts it in our plan, of the 10-year plan, to actually put the POS in there so that we can actually earmark it and start funding towards it, because it's inevitable that it's going to be needed in the future. If you look at the development that's happening, I don't think that it's ridiculous to foresee it in the future, and that way it takes care of a temporary solution of putting in the sidewalk, do the count after the build out is complete to see when exactly in that 10-year it should be. But if it's in the 10-year budget, we can start working towards it.
Right.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. What I see in the numbers is basically less people, but twice as many vehicles, so they're actually at a higher risk trying to cross for the little bit of people that are trying to cross. I think there should be a sidewalk that is put in first, and then when the development carries on, there's going to be more people, and then it might reach the standard of what we need for the county to actually support it. I also don't like bump outs, especially on that road, like bumping it out, narrowing the road up. Just with the ag background I have, it is a nightmare to move equipment when you have to yield to the other side. My opinion, it is a nightmare. Belmont, they did that in Belmont. It is a pain to come through Belmont with equipment now, because you have to move over. I understand why we do it, to slow everybody down, to bring it tighter, but as far as moving, agriculture or larger equipment straight through north and south, I don't like the jut out, but that's my input. Thank you.
Councillor Oslage.
Yeah, Your Worship. To Terry, which is cheaper, sidewalk or POS?
Through your worship, I haven't put together an estimate for the sidewalk yet, but I would expect the PXO would come in slightly cheaper than the sidewalk, but the sidewalk would be within the budget amount for that missing link that we could complete it with our sidewalk program.
So why not go with a POS?
A PXO. So the thought is that if we complete other pedestrian counts and it does warrant a PXO at that time, either in the summer months or in several years once the full build out is reached, that at that point it will be warranted and we could do a joint project with the county because it would fall under their jurisdiction. Then we wouldn't need to include it on our 10-year budget as they would put it in for us, or we could work with them to get that done.
Indeed, all of these items, A, B, C, D, would come before council again, so we're not going to lose sight of this particular request. And certainly, I believe that the county should pay for the sidewalk, period. So we have to go through the county requests. But I can see, if you're using item C, where you do another count, that'll be brought before council again, and we'll have a bigger evidence to do the crosswalk. So I'm sure how do we need to include A, B, C, D in the resolution, or can?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess fortunately, both of the members of council that were supportive of adding B were the mover and seconder, so we could just consider that as the main motion with options A, B, and C, if they're willing. Yep.
Is that okay for the original? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, just to be clear, we are voting on A, B, and C. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 7.18, Director of Financial Services Tax Write-Off. We have a resolution.
That report, Finance 3123, entitled Tax Write-Off Report 2023, be received for information, and that council acknowledges the changes to the 2023 tax rolls as outlined in Schedule A as the 2003 tax write-offs approved under the Municipal Act.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Chapman, Councillor Rahi. Heather.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report you have in front of you this evening is a standard report yearly to be put in front of council per the Municipal Act. So I'll start at the top of the spreadsheet and just run through, for council's benefit, what types of things we have to write off. So the first type is what's called just a 354. And for that parcel of land, it was from a failed tax sale in 2015 that council decided to write off the $73 a year for this undesirable piece of land that was, there's nothing we can really do with that land. So it's owned by a private owner. They didn't pay their taxes. We had it up for tax sale right before it went back to us. The council decided to write off that amount. So we historically have been writing that off, just for the newer council members that have never seen this report. The next section there is, they're called PRANs or PRANs or prawns. They're post-roll assessment notices. So some of the things that MPAC does is they'll reassess if a portion of a residential property had a commercial space in it and all of a sudden they don't have a business in that commercial space anymore, that would show up on this write-off report. So there may be a supplemental or an omit tax run for these write-offs. It's not necessarily saying we lost this money entirely. It's just sometimes, most of the time, in a change in class, or if there's been a fire and we're catching up, MPAC's catching up a write-off from a couple years ago, you'll see those sometimes labeled as PRANs. There's also 357s on the list, which is an owner-initiated, usually an owner-initiated type of write-off. So again, sometimes the commercial space going to residential, there's an exemption there if there's part of a building that's doing that. We also have, buildings that may be flipped to churches or fire or demos. So any of these buildings, you're going to notice some of those buildings have had fires. So they get reprieve from MPAC related to their taxes. Basically, this is just a statutory report that we have to put in front of council every year. The rest are bylaws. 69 Brown Street has had a bylaw historically for many years. And I can't see the other ones down below. And then we have the Conservation Authority and the farmland lease. So we own farmland that we lease out. We're not going to make ourselves pay taxes, so we write it off. But it is, because we have a lease on that land, it is taxable. So if there's any other questions from council, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Heather. Councillor Chapman.
Through you, Your Worship, I understand the ones that are, there's multiple entries for the same address. So are these apartment buildings? Is that what I'm looking at?
So basically, a lot of these are in and out. So basically, there's a year column also. So basically for, let's say, 144 Sydenham, you'll see a write-off for 2021 and 2022 and 2023. So, but there may have been a supplemental run for that. That's not on this list, but we do it by year because the rates are different. So if you see the address, the majority of the time, 3 times in a row, it's because it's from a different year, and we have to show you guys the multi-year write-off.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution, that's carried. Thank you. Item 7.110, Director of Corporate and Legislative Services concerning appointment update resolution. Did I miss 7.19? Going too fast tonight, thank you very much, I'm sorry. Go to 7.19, this, oh yes, the Public Sector Accounting Board Standard, you have a resolution, Josh.
That report, Finance 3223, entitled Public Sector Accounting Board Standard on Asset Retirement Obligations and Proposed Town Policy, be received for information, and that council acknowledges and approves the Public Sector Accounting Board Standard on Asset Retirement Obligations and Proposed Town Finance Policy.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Van Reyes. Heather.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you and to members of council, the policy you have in front of you this evening is for PSAB 3280 to endorse the requirement to report the asset retirement obligation on the financial statements for each municipality. So this is a new requirement that is required for year end. We have to send this policy to our auditor, excuse me, in order to get her feedback. We don't know the measurement of the asset retirement obligation at this time. We're still in the measurement stages of this, so as a result of this scoping phase of the town's ARO project, I've been working with Josh's team, Tyler and specifically as the CBO. He's got a wealth of knowledge on these buildings, and he also has old facility condition assessments that have identified some areas that we would need to present on our balance sheet. So currently, we're going through all of those old and current facility condition assessments, specifically for town assets that we're have to report on are the potential for asbestos and lead in some of the facilities, underground storage tanks with holding fuel and oil. There's land leases and leasehold improvements that we have to look at. Some of those properties have already been reviewed and offloaded. So there's no concern with those assets that we've already sold through the purchase and sale agreement. And then there's roads that are containing asbestos elements also that we have to look at. So for year end, we will have a liability on our balance sheet. This will be a work in progress report. Another report will come before council, and we'll review this yearly. Also, when we're adding assets to our inventory and we're taking on capital, the asset retirement obligation needs to be considered. So that's basically just, we have to make sure that we are providing for the retirement of that asset obligation in, 50 years or so, whenever the asset is retired. So this is just something new from the accounting perspective that we have to do, and I have to get it endorsed by council in order to put those numbers on the balance sheet for year end, so.
Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution, that's carried, thank you. And now we go to 7.110 concerning the appointment bylaw update. Josh.
That report, Clerk 5723, entitled Appointment Bylaw Update, is received for information, and that council approves the amendments as outlined in the report, Clerk 5723, and further that council directs staff to prepare a bylaw to confirm those amendments at the January 10th, 2024 regular meeting of council.
Mover and seconder, Councillor, Deputy Mayor Barber, Councillor Chapman. All right, just a few comments from me. I make these recommendations. I have spoken to everyone concerned in these recommendations. I believe that a variety of experiences amongst councillors is good, and that also I need to be appointed to some committee. So that's what this recommendation does as well. Comments from council? Councillor Chapman.
I just noticed that the Terrace Lodge Fundraising Committee, it says the effective date is March 1st, 2023. That needs to be corrected to 2024.
Thank you. Will be. Anyone else? Councillor Desrosiers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to oppose these recommendations, excluding the police board appointment recommendation, but also not only due to circumstances surrounding the recommendation, but also due to principle and motive. The decision to remove my position from the BIA committee comes after a series of events that was mishandled and supported by our leadership as an attempt to abuse their role within this organization to manipulate and control the governance that our democracy is in place to protect. On September 20th, I was made aware of a concern of governance and recruitment within the BIA. After further investigating the matter with staff, it was clear that municipal policy was historically not being implemented by the committee, and a conversation with the committee was necessary to ensure future work was done within municipal policy and guidelines. On October 19th, at our committee meeting, this discussion was had. Although the committee was reluctant to follow policy, inevitably the choice was non-negotiable. This was not a matter of opinion. Policy and procedures are in place by our Municipal Act to ensure a transparent governance, ensure fair practice, and for financial integrity. On November 2nd, the BIA coordinator emailed the committee with the solicited quotations. As the formal quotations were not included within this email, and furthermore, as there was an extensive price variance between the quotes, I privately contacted the coordinator and requested to review the formal quotations, hoping to gain insight as to the price variance. This email was ignored, and not the first occasion an inquiry was disregarded. After following up with staff on November 6th, an FOI was submitted and requested for the information originally sought. This FOI was paid for through my own personal funds and delivered as directed by staff. On November 9th, I was contacted by Mayor Cookett via telephone, as he had been contacted by the BIA coordinator and chair of the BIA regarding this FOI. As I'm sure you are all aware, an FOI is a confidential document. Any information disclosed is a direct breach of confidentiality and a violation of privacy. Secondly, this conversation conveyed a dark tone, as the mayor expressed his discontent with the situation and instructed me to retract the FOI. Quote, "Your next step at this point is to retract the FOI, as I do not and would not have approved of this inquiry." I responded that while I appreciate his concern for the matter, the request made was not excessive in nature, and the fact that this was done with such defense and intent to withhold only made the inquiry more concerning in nature. 6 days later, on November 15th, after a meeting of council, Mayor Cookett asked me to accompany to his office to have a discussion. In this discussion, he informed me that he would be removing me from the BIA committee and stepping into its place. Understandably, I questioned the notion, stating, "This interchange seems as though you are punishing me based on the recent situation and phone discussion." The mayor responded, quote, "Well, I would be lying if I told you it didn't have a little to do with that, just to be direct," end quote. This entire situation is concerning for various reasons. Firstly, that a member of council is essentially being punished for acting on an obligation of oath and the policies written within our Municipal Act and procedural bylaw. Secondly, that disrespectful and unprofessional behavior is being enabled and encouraged. Thirdly, those in a position of power and leadership are attempting to manipulate and merit control of situations that are confidential and an act of freedom. And finally, that this behavior is invoked on the youngest female member of this council. This is absolutely unacceptable behavior and extremely disappointing. I would like my council to consider this information provided and the degree of integrity as it relates to the situation. I am clearly opposed to the recommendation of the mayor, these recommendations of the mayor for reasons related within the statement, and I ask council to give honorable consideration prior to adopting changes within the committee appointments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor DeShosier. Are there any other comments? Seeing nothing, you have a recommendation before you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Can we have a recorded vote, please?
All right. Member Rahe,
Nay? No?
Member Van Raes,
Yes.
Member Chapman,
No.
Member Barber,
Yay.
Member Oslich,
Yes.
Member Cookett,
Yes?
Member DeRosier.
No.
So by a vote of 4-3, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. New business and matters of urgency. Number 9, reading of bylaws and proceedings thereon. We have a number of items in the bylaw. We have a long resolution.
That council gives 3 readings to and approves the following bylaws. Bylaw 7223, being a bylaw to regulate traffic and parking with the town of Elmer. Bylaw 7323, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Elmer to authorize the application of Section 418.1 of the Municipal Act 2001 to it as the participating municipality in the One-Jib Board. Bylaw 7423, being a bylaw to set the water and wastewater rates and charges for 2024 within the Town of Elmer. Bylaw 7523, being a bylaw to appoint the municipal auditors. Bylaw 7623, being a bylaw which is a bylaw to establish fees and charges for the corporation of the Town of Elmer. And finally, bylaw 7723, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at the regular council meeting held on November the 15th, 2023.
Thank you. Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman and Councillor Oslach. Any questions about any of those or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. Are there any inquiries by members? Statements and committee reports by members. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Your Worship. On behalf of the Terrace Lodge Comforts of Home Fundraising Committee, I would like to announce that in partnership with the Kinsmen are going to be holding a gala on February 17th, and the proceeds will be going to Comfort of Home. And it's going to be a dinner, a dance, and an auction, and I hope to see everyone there.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, nothing. Report of the mayor. First, I noticed a number of councillors at the lighting of the lights, and certainly when you drive into the town, it really is a magnificent sight. So the people who are responsible, I thank again. It was just a marvelous bunch of volunteers who do this. Certainly the town owes them because it's great. So thank you again out there who worked on this. Secondly, it's time for the mayor. Thank you. One of the citizens of this town is an associate member of something called a worshipful company. His work was heard loud and clear on November the 11th this year and in many past years. If you attended the Remembrance Day ceremony, you could clearly hear out the town hall tower clock strike 11 times right during the moment of silence, which was right at 11 o'clock. Timing. Such precision does not come automatically. Dave Chalk has volunteered for decades in maintaining our tower clock. Every few months, he makes sure that it's oiled and greased and in perfect working order. So thank you, David Clark, associate member of the Worshipful Company of Clockmakers. And thirdly, some of you may have heard the rumor that Josh is leaving us. And it's truly a conflicted comment. I'd hate the word conflicted, but I'm using it. It's really conflicted to think about this. Congratulations, first of all, Josh. You're going to Blandford and Blenheim Township, which is the northeast of Woodstock. And I guess the greatest compliment you can get in any organization, any job, is that no one wants you to go. No one wants you to go, Josh. But anyway, congratulations. Thank you for everything you've done in this town, and we shall miss you. Thank you very much. Next, I believe, we must be moving into closed session, correct? Notice of motion right through. No notice of motion? And then we are going into closed session. We have a resolution.
That council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 8:35 p.m. to discuss the following matters. So the first item is item 14.1, report from the Chief Administrative Officer, report CAO 7023, and this is respecting a potential industrial land assumption. And consideration of this item is closed to the public pursuant to Section 239(2)C and F of the Municipal Act as amended, as the subject matter pertains to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, and advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. The next item is item 14.2. This is a report from the Chief Administrative Officer, Report CAO 7123, and this is respecting legislative and corporate services restructuring proposal. In consideration of this item is closed to the public pursuant to Section 239(2)B and D of the Municipal Act as amended, as the subject matter pertains to personal matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and labor relations or employee negotiations. And finally, item 14.3, this is a report from the Chief Administrative Officer, Report 7223, and it's a matter related to human resources information. In consideration of this item is closed to the public pursuant to Section 239(2)B and E of the Municipal Act as amended, as the subject matter pertains to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals.
Thank you. Mover and seconder, Councillor Van Raes and Councillor Wesledge. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, and we will have a brief recess as we move into close. Welcome back. We have a motion to rise and report.
That council rises from the meeting closed to the public at 9:32 PM and reports the following: that council gave advice to the Chief Administrative Officer regarding report CAO 7023, potential industrial land assumption. Council gave advice to the Chief Administrative Officer regarding report CAO 7123, respecting the Legislative and Corporate Services Department restructuring proposal. And finally, that council gave advice to the Chief Administrative Officer regarding report CAO 7223, respecting a matter related to human resources information.
Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Barber and Councillor Van Raes. All those in favor? And we're carried. Thank you. So the next item is adjournment. I should point out that unless there is a need for a meeting for the rest of the year, our next meeting will be on January the 10th, right? So we have adjournment for this meeting. Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman and Councillor Van Raes. Any discussion about adjourning?
I'm against that.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Recorded vote.
Carried.
Back in January.
Great, thank you very